attacking, exciting players that they had last year, and what's coming really is Tickle and Danny Galea. Now, I don't know a lot about Danny Galea at all, but I imagine he's more of a hard-working type. Didn't get a lot of games in the NRL recently. When he did play, he wasn't an attacking threat from the statistics I've researched. Tickle scores you points, obviously, with his boot, but Hock and Winterstein were 3 times more likely to contribute to a try, either scoring it or setting it up, than Tickle was last season. I think that speaks of a big loss in that area, attacking-wise, although he does work harder in defence, so it swings and roundabouts. The other player who I was going to talk about at great lengths, but unfortunately for the lad, is broke his leg, is Liam Carberry.
Yeah, real shame.
That's a big disappointment because, getting out of Wigan, he wasn't going to play in Wigan, but he was going to play at Widnes. There was no doubt about it. He impressed in the game, in the first pre-season game against Warrington. Good reviews of him after that game. A lot of chat about him from Betts as well.
Yeah.
And then he breaks his leg. I can't.
Was that
feel
training
the guy.
or was that?
No, it was in the trial game against the Crusaders.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a shame for a good-looking young player as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, John Clark needs to come off the field at some point. He's the 4th oldest player in Super League, so he was going to be key. He was going to zip things up. I think that's a massive shame.
What about in the halves? Because Kevin Brown and Joe Mellor, as a standoff scrum half combination, isn't bad, but they don't have a lot of depth after that, do they?
They've got a lot of bits and pieces players. You look at the squad, there's a lot of players who are listed as standoff or fullback, hooker or halfback, centre or standoff. I think there's a lot of bits and pieces players. That's maybe the depth and the makeup of the squad. They've tried to get as many players who can cover positions, because they are relatively thin in quality, for sure. But, yeah, if they keep those two playing, the school combination, like I say, Joe Mellor improved out of sight last. He was one of the most impressive players that I saw at the Magic weekend last year, that's for sure. I've got them finishing 10th.
Yeah, and I've got 11th, but I think we sort of have the same opinions in terms of how they'll run through the year, so it's really only a negligible difference.
The one to watch was Carberry, but I don't know when he'll be back now. I hope he gets back sooner rather than later. I think he'll be a great player.
Key man
for them.
Reece Hambury, really.
Definitely.
Head and shoulders, their most talented player, I would say.
I don't understand why he wasn't in the running for one of the end-of-season awards last year. In my opinion, he should have been talked about seriously for even the Dream Team. Sam Tompkins you can't argue with, but Man of Steel as well. I think he should have been talked about in these terms. I think he contributed over a third of Widnes' tries through either assists or through scoring them himself. He broke the line more than any player in Super League. That might be a surprising stat when you've got people like Hardacre, Watkins, Tompkins, Charnley, these brilliant, explosive, fast players. He broke the line more than they did. I wanted him as the replacement for Tompkins, personally, but you don't get everything you want.
You don't get everything you want, but that's a very strong recommendation from you. No, I like the look of Reece Hambury. I think he's a very talented player within that Widnes team, and I think a lot will hinge on how he goes this year. Will hang a lot of Widnes' hopes on it. So good luck to Widnes. Wigan Warriors.
Yeah, our final club. Save the best till last, as they say.
Certainly statistically.
Well, last year I think surpassed our expectations, winning the double with all the players we lost, but we've lost even more. When you lose the best player in the league, you lose your goal kicker, you lose probably your leading prop forward, and you lose one of the heartbeats of the dressing room. You've lost 4 massive players. Replacing Sam, though, we brought in Matt Bowen. I mean, he's a legend. He's a legend in North Queensland, People are worried about his knees. He's played a lot in the last 3 seasons, so I think people should be assured that he should be okay and up for it. Maybe he's not got into the swing of the fitness, rumour has it, straight away, but I'm sure he knows what to do, because last year he knew what to do. He was still very explosive, very entertaining, very impressive, pushing the Cowboys into the playoffs. The other big thing to replace is Pat Richards, try scoring and goal kicking. Goal kicking, Charnley or Matty Smith are the most likely. Neither are great, but Pat wasn't great. Pat worked hard. Pat made himself a 90% kicker. So those two can possibly do it. I think Matty Smith might be the more long-term option there.
Yeah.
Wing spot. Gelling's been given the 5 shirt, but hasn't convinced when he's played on the wing. much stronger in the centres. It's the kids. It's Joe Burgess and it's Don Manfredi. They're the ones. They're going to play. It's been, he scored 4 tries in the trial game against Lee. Okay, it was against Lee. He scored 4 tries.
I don't think there's anything wrong with Wigan bringing in these young lads and getting them out there. I think there's a very famous football-related quote that says you don't win anything with kids that got proven quite astoundingly wrong, didn't it? So there's nothing in my mind that says that if these kids aren't good enough in the eyes of Sean Wayne, that they shouldn't start, and I agree with you. I think Joe Burgess looked like a very, very talented player. You can only beat the opposition that's in front of you, and admittedly that was Lee, and they're a championship side, but he destroyed them. 4-try haul is a phenomenal return for a young lad. So, no, I like the look of Joe Burgess, and I don't have any issues in terms of Wigan's performance bringing in these 2 young lads.
And even the other players they brought in, Tony Clubb's very experienced in the Super League. John Bateman's very talented and excited. He was talked about as the next Andy Farrell 3 years ago, and
he was.
He's got the chance to do that now.
Mm-hmm.
Impressed in his debut again against Lee, but he impressed. And Sam Hopkins, maybe he's our attempt to be Chris Hill or Alex Walmsley. Step up, full-time training will make a difference, and he could perform at this level. Eddie Pettybourne, he's also an experienced player, played quite a bit of NRL, played in the World Cup. So, it's a downgrade because we've lost Lee Mossop and Harrison Hansen, but it's not a massive drop. There's potential to get back up to that level in that squad. It's the youngest complete squad in Super League. London aren't complete yet, are they?
No.
So 22.7 years old. But within that, there's players who've won 4 grand finals. 2 grand finals and 2 Challenge Cups. There's players who've won 2 League Leaders Shields. There's 11 players who played over 100 games in either the NRL or the Super League. There's plenty of winning experience. Okay,
so all that adds up to what for you in terms of Wigan's league place in this season then?
3rd place.
3rd place.
I think they'll manage the fitness of some of the key players like they did last year to make sure they peak for finals, for playoffs, for knockout games. So that's why they'll finish in 3rd place. I think Matt Bowen, he's replacing Sam, so he has to be the key man because Sam was the key man. It's as simple as that. And Joe Burgess is the one to watch because someone's got to fill that position, and he looks the most likely.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think the year's going to be more transitional than perhaps you would like for Wigan, which is why I've got them finishing 4th. But for a lot of the same reasons, I think they'll do very well this year and finishing 4th. I think Matt Bowen is a very, very sensible, intelligent way of replacing Sam Tompkins. He's not the long-term replacement at full-back for them, but he brings you bags of experience. He's an explosive runner. I think that's a very, very sensible, shrewd piece of business. I want to watch is John Bateman. Heartbreaking in a way to see that potential eke away from the Bulls. But then towards the back end of last year, it was very clear he didn't want to be at the club anymore for a number of reasons. He's a young lad, and if he gets his head on right and buys into the whole Wigan mentality and the wonderful structure they've got at the club and all the history that goes with it, he'll do very well. If he stays too cocksure and certain of himself and spends a lot of time down, is it King Street in Wigan where all the bars are, then perhaps he'll struggle. But the early indicators are that he's getting his head down, he's lost a bit of weight, and he played well against Lee yesterday. So one to watch.
The next Andy Farrell springs to mind, doesn't it? Had to be young for his age, young family, in his teenage years. There's a lot of comparisons there.
There are. He dropped off in terms of performance, and if he picks it up again this time round,
ability to offload late in the tackle. Yeah.
He's a good-looking player. Don't get me wrong, and I'm trying not to be too bitter because I would love to see him playing well in a Bulls shirt. But credit to the boy, he's got a good move to Wigan. He's got everything he wanted in terms of his announcements on Twitter and to be paid regularly and on time, which I think he's got the right to expect. And one way or another, he's engineered himself a move to one of the best sides in the country. So,
world.
Good luck to him. Certainly in the country. Top 10 in the world. Which brings us rapidly to the end of our team-by-team breakdown for the season. We only agreed on 2 teams finishing
in the same position.
We agreed on 2 teams, Salford and... Oh no, forgive me, it was...
Salford
and Wigan, and I forget now. I'm scrolling far too quickly through. But it'll be interesting to see come the end of the season which one of us was closest to the mark.
Last year I was one position out with almost every team with my predictions.
Which means you can take a lot of what Mark says with a massive pinch of salt and put a lot of stock in my fairly off the cuff pronouncements.
But
so
let's go with the big prizes. Who's going to win the big prizes? Let's go with the grand final, and I'm going to have Warrington winning the league leaders and the grand final. I just think it has to be their year, 1 year.
Well, the law of averages says that they will eventually win it, doesn't it? So
well coached, good pack, good talent, the speed and skill in the creative axis of Rashford, Myler, Russell, and also, it's got to be their year, 1 year.
Well, I disagree. I think Huddersfield Giants are going to go on and win the lot, to be honest, in terms of finishing top and then going through and winning the grand final. I just think Warrington, away from the stats and away from the good players, there needs to be a mentality at a team that says we are capable of getting over the line and winning. And the Challenge Cup isn't the same as the Super League. It isn't the same as getting through the playoffs. And I just think that it's endemic in Warrington at the minute that they're going to choke again. I don't see them getting over this hoodoo, if you want. Whereas Huddersfield, you could make the same argument for, but I like them this year. I think they've got, they're not replacing key players. Admittedly, Warrington are replacing key players with quality, but they're not replacing key players. They've had a very stable off-season in terms of the comings and goings. I think they get moved around the pitch behind a massive set of forwards, and they've got some cracking backs and some cracking outside backs as well. So I think Huddersfield, if you finish above Huddersfield, you're going to be the champions of Britain. That's the only way I can see it going, to be honest.
Fair enough. What about the Cup? I think we've gone for the same selection here. I've gone with Leeds, very much on the same logic of one of these times they're going to have to blooming win it. I mean, they've been beaten in enough finals 3 times in the last 4 years, and there's 7 of those 8 blokes over 30 haven't played in a winning Challenge Cup final. For all the trophies they've won, for all the glittering career they've had, Sinfield, Maguire, they've not won the Cup.
Mm.
So I think it's going to be the focus. They just need to time the run to a bit earlier in the season, and they could be full swing for the Cup final rather than full swing for the playoffs. Yeah,
I agree. I fancy Leeds for the Challenge Cup because on their day they can beat anybody. I think consistency will keep them from winning the league. Not a massive lack of consistency, but I think there'll be more consistent teams around them. But on their day, with those backs and with the experience they've got in the halves and with the experience they have in the forwards, it adds up to a very good campaign in the Challenge Cup for me. I think they'll play against one of the Hull teams. Let's give Hull KR a chance. Let's say that they'll play Hull KR, but I think Leeds will get to the final and do a very good job.
I think Salford might be the team they beat, but there you go.
Well, there you are. Could be anybody. At the end of the day, we agree, intra-podcast agreement on Leeds Rhinos winning the Challenge Cup.
Man of Steel. If I'm going Wire to win the league, to win the grand final, I'm going Stefan Rashford to win Man of Steel. I think I've probably spoken enough about him. He's probably worried that I'm going to be stood outside his house drooling, but the guy can play football. Can play rugby football.
Yeah, well, I'm going to use my logic and go with you don't have to be in the winning team to be the Man of Steel, do you, Danny Brough?
Raggy Chase, you don't even have to be in the playoffs.
No, absolutely. Full disclosure, I did think Stefan Rashford would be my pick for Man of Steel, but I don't want to be too samey with you. So I'm going to make a strong case for Mr. Chris Hill. I think he was England's biggest performer without the surname Burgess. Certainly the second best player in the England team of this World Cup. He's developed really well since coming into the full-time game. He's going to learn a lot from guys like Roy Asatazi. Forgive me, I'm block-nosed, can't pronounce things. And I think he's going to... I just like the way he runs the ball. He gets his work done in defensively, he makes big tackles, and he sets a really good platform. And to be honest with you, if Stefan Rashford wins Man of Steel, it'll be because of the platform that Chris Hill's laid for him. So, Chris Hill, Man of Steel for me.
Fair enough.
Which
there goes our prediction.
Roundly brings us to the end of our predictions. So, for the first time, I'd like to invite anybody on Twitter or on the Facebook page to get in touch with us and tell us what you think of our predictions and what yours are, if they're any different. It's very easy to get in touch with us. We're pretty much all over social media, even now before the first podcast comes out. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter, we're at Super League Pod. Search for us on Facebook for the same. And the blog that complements this podcast, thank you, is Super League Pod reese.blogspot.co.uk. So should that be at Blogspot?
No.
No, .blogspot. Don't use any at signs. I think because it's something that's happened recently in the news, we should probably give